So, a, a, a sort of thought that I'm grappling with right now is my ongoing reservations about Discord as a platform. I mean, I think a personality type like mine will necessarily find being on Discord harder than certain other personality types would, because for me, not only am I a very visual person, you know, but for me, being able to look at a person and read certain things about their body language and the aesthetic choices they make about themselves is just so important. Above and beyond the fact that people on Discord tend to be very trolly and very caustic in their sense of humor. And I'm being hypocritical as I say this because sometimes my sense of humor can be a bit caustic. I don't know that I ought to be that way. I think it might be a good thing for me to change about myself so that I can become more positive. But, you know, the thought on my mind is how, in order to make myself more secure within myself and to not need as much psychological support from others, I've very much lately focused on doing the things that make me feel reassured within myself and avoiding doing things that make me feel insecure. And as a result, I do genuinely feel more secure. Even when I do finally go on to talk to people, I have, back when people used to call me to get me to do social situations with them, I used to have the sensation that they were rescuing me from, this abyss of loneliness that I somehow deserved. Whereas now I have more of a sensation of, okay, here's a chance to hang out with some people, that's nice. But, I could do it or go without it. And, I don't feel as much as though I owe them some sort of massive debt of gratitude. Maybe well, it's not as if I don't genuinely appreciate their company or attention. I do, especially when they're kind to me. Um, uh, but that's the thing. Cause yeah, there is a guy that I like and I want to approach him, and I've talked about him in these vlogs before. But the thing is, whatever guy I like, right? For me to make things move forward with him, I would have to do something to make that happen. And my experiences of doing these things to try to get a relationship going with a guy, I have this year behind me of doing these things, of trying to approach a guy who I really, really liked, and having it go nowhere and avail to nothing. And I really don't want to go through that experience again because it did feel. Well, I assume that it availed to nothing because I don't know whether or not I ended up actually meaning anything to that guy. That's the thing I could never figure out, whether he invited me to his baptism as a mean joke or whether he, actually valued my presence. I could never tell with him because he revealed so little of himself. And if I think about this guy that I like now, who I want to approach, likewise, he is sometimes a bit cold in his behavior, and, it isn't as if he ignores me as much as the other guy ever did, but he doesn't seem to be going, well, okay, no, it isn't fair to exactly compare them because there are definitely things that this new guy did to reach out to me. Well, I shouldn't call him a new guy. I actually knew him even before this whole thing with the guy last year happened, but just back then you know, I thought he was gay. So I didn't consider him as an option. That and I didn't know that he had any real identification with Christianity at all. Uh but see, like, my gut instinct is saying stay away from him because it's going to be just like the guy last year, and you're going to get hurt again, and it's going to go nowhere. But the thing I know is, like, already people have told me, yes, there are people who actually form relationships on Discord. And the thing is, the bulk of the sorts of guys that I really like, the sort of guy that I would really want to connect with, are the sort of guys who tend to hang out on Discord a lot. So I have to make this kind of choice. Do I want to go after the kind of guy that I do like and potentially get hurt and humiliated again? Or do I want to just continue to be alone and continue to do the things that I find fulfilling, but that probably won't result in a relationship for me ever? And or if it does, it's very unlikely, and it's unlikely to be happening with the sort of guy that I would really like. But if I stop myself and say, well, why do I like this kind of guy so much? Do I really like them? Or is it just that my life experiences have been such that I'm psychologically predisposed to like them because of the way I was raised? You know, the fact that I was raised with this value set that says that being smart is more important than being emotionally intelligent, and that, you know, that, yeah, being good at math and science is somehow more valuable than being good at art, or that, you know, being emotionally cold is better than being emotionally open with people. You know, those were the values I was raised with, and they're unhealthy values, but it means that I tend to be attracted to that sort of guy who has those traits, even though it might not be the best thing for me, and even though I consciously understand that this is the case, for my part, you know, even though I know that now that, like, because I used to believe that a nerd boy would never even notice me because I'm just not smart enough. I'm not good enough for them, so I thought, you know, no chance with a nerd boy. And what I've learned is, no, nerd boys don't necessarily think of me that way. Not all of them think that they're too good for a normal woman. Well, I'm not even normal, I'm a weirdo, but anyway, that's the point. The point is, I ended up learning that I'm not necessarily inherently unattractive to the nerd boy type. And already that was a big shift for me. Already learning that was a shock. So, but see, this is another one of those instances where I have these assumptions, these cultural expectations, like, and I end up making decisions based on those assumptions, even though those assumptions might very well be completely divorced from reality. And yeah, like I right now I'm assuming that all nerd boys must be emotionally unintelligent, and that somebody has to be somehow emotionally retarded to feel comfortable on Discord, even though I know that that's not true. You know, there are people I know who use Discord well and are very happy with it, and they don't seem to be particularly emotionally constipated as I talk to them. They seem, you know, emotionally very aware of themselves and very interested in the concept of human relationships. But it won't. Supposing I re-entered the group that I have in common with the guy that I would like to date, it wouldn't bode well, because I would still be placing myself in this situation where which typically provokes a great deal of insecurity in me, where I feel like I'm trying to elbow my way into a social situation where I'm not really wanted, or not really welcome. And these feelings I have about, you know, going into Discord servers, and trying to, you know, talk to the main people there, those feelings persist even when I'm directly told by those people that I am very welcome. And I think it is because when I was in high school, I had situations where there were pre-existing social groups, and I tried to join in and have fun with them. and I got rejected and excluded. And I got, pretty traumatized by that, really. That experience of being constantly rejected throughout, for about 10 years of my life is naturally going to impact my ability to feel comfortable with groups to this day. And, a very large part of why my emotional stability is so contingent upon being comfortable alone is precisely because I don't feel at ease with groups. And with this being the case, I think it would be a bad idea for me to go back into the group just yet. I mean, I'm still participating in some group activities to try to get myself more comfortable with the concept of groups, and also just because, really a 31-year-old woman should be able to be in a group setting without having a total meltdown. It should be okay. And for the most part I can handle it. It's just occasionally when I'm entering this particular part of the month, because, today is either today or yesterday was the day I was meant to ovulate. And, between ovulation and actually getting my period, I become, very emotionally volatile. And, the first few days, like right now I'm within the first few days, so I'm still relatively sane. I'm able to sit here and, logically think my thoughts and feelings through and say, okay, Shona, these fears you're having are probably connected to your own trauma rather than anything inherent to the situation. Because, a normal person would just go up to the guy and be like, hey, look, I like you. I want to go on a date with you. Can we do this? And just, talk it out. And I want to do that. I'd like to. I've been tempted to do that a few times, But that's the thing, like, I don't know whether or not I'm, psychologically competent just yet. I still want to. I want to see this period of the month through. Period, pun. I want to see this the next couple of weeks through. And if I get through these couple of weeks, right, and I haven't completely fallen into a ditch of misanthropy over this guy, then I think I will contact him. But if I get, well, that's the thing, I don't know whether or not he's even single anymore. Like, because if people are capable of forming relationships via Discord, and he's been very active in the Discord group, then for all I know he has formed a relationship with somebody there, and I just haven't been told about it yet. Which does sometimes happen. And I'm getting a little worried because I remember back when, last year when I was going through all that I went through with the other guy last year, I started out the situation thinking, oh, look, I'll go out with him a bit and I'll be fine, if it doesn't work out, because, I've got options. I'm an attractive woman. I'll be okay. And I ended up being very not okay, like to an extent that I didn't predict at all. And I'm still not totally okay. I'm still getting over the trauma of all of that happened. But then again, that wasn't all on me. Like admittedly, the fact that I was as insecure of myself as I was back then didn't help, and I probably should have had a greater willing to work on my own emotional state. I didn't know how much trouble I was really in, though, until relatively recently. I didn't know how psychologically abnormal I really am until recently. Well, or was. I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself. Like, so much about how I think and feel has changed. That's why I want to do this challenge on myself. But yeah, just there were negative contributions on both sides in that situation last year. He was not I feel that he was not communicating with me as much as he should have done. I feel like this thing he did of telling me that he didn't have time for a relationship, and then going on to tell me in the same evening that he stays up all night to talk to people from America. Like, admittedly, I shouldn't have been so insecure that that would eat me up for a whole year, but it's still it's still not the right thing to say to somebody, because you're basically saying to them, even though you're standing right in front of me, I would rather relate to somebody who's in another country. But, you're just not worth my time and attention. These people are, you are not, and okay, admittedly, that's me applying my own cultural assumptions and interpretations to what he said rather than the actual situation. Because, yeah, within myself, I do have a predisposition to feel like if somebody's talking to me, I'm just wasting their time anyway. And, so for him to say things like that is naturally going to, provoke those sorts of thought patterns in me. And when I have talked to other people about it, some of them have been like, well, no, hang on, being in a relationship is a very different commitment to staying up all night talking to them on Discord or playing video games with someone. They're very different commitments. So what, it isn't reasonable for you to equate the two and compare the two concepts. And again, what I know within myself is that if I really, really, really like somebody, like really, particularly if at some point they've said or done something that hurt my feelings, it's very hard for me to be sufficiently at ease around them that I could talk to them all night. It's much more likely that I would be able to talk to them for maybe an hour or two, and then I would feel emotionally exhausted, and I would need to go to bed. Whereas if it's somebody who I'm not that crazy about, and they haven't hurt my feelings at all, it'd be a lot easier for me to stay up all night talking to them because I'd be more at ease. I'd be more relaxed, and so I could just sit there and, muck around with them and not worry. And so, again, I'm making a negative assumption about people which doesn't even apply to myself. I don't have to assume that I'm meaningless to somebody else just because they wouldn't stay up all night talking to me. Like, yeah, it's something that I sometimes did with people back in my 20s, but that was because back in my 20s I was incredibly emotionally needy, and I would have stayed up all night with anybody if they had allowed me back then. Well, maybe not anybody. I mean, there were some people I would have been too uncomfortable with just because they were grossing me out, but yeah, definitely back then I was a lot more desperate for company. And, even now as I try to reevaluate how I handle my interpersonal relationships, I find myself having to make these decisions of, well, when somebody approaches me wanting to have my attention or my time, should I give it to them freely, or should I be making executive decisions about who I do and don't spend time with? Because some people, if I'm honest, I just don't. I get a bad feeling about them. I get a bad gut feeling, and admittedly, I have no way of knowing what that bad gut feeling even really means. Like, if I think about it, do I really believe this person is going to defraud or murder me? No. So what is this bad gut feeling connected to? I don't know, but if I am having a bad gut feeling about somebody, is my moral obligation to stay and try to, get comfortable with them, or is my moral obligation to run and to try to, to just preserve myself, and when I think about that, I think there are times when I've suspected that people have been making negative assumptions about me and thinking that I'm a scammer and therefore avoiding me, and that has felt hurtful at times because In general, if you're trying to foster genuine human connections with other people and you're getting knocked back because they're so suspicious of you, of course that's not going to feel good. Like, nobody likes that. But that's the thing. I wonder if I should just accept that as a necessary part of human interactions, or if I should challenge it and try to make myself hang out with people I'm uncomfortable with anyway. And if I am going to think that way, then maybe I should accept the notion of trying to socialize in Discord groups. But that's the thing. Whenever I am in a Discord group actively trying to connect with people there, I'm always left feeling rejected. Because no matter how much I reach out to people, they never reach back as much as I want. Like, it's been unilaterally the case that, they always take longer to get back to me than I would want, or they don't say as much as I want, and I end up feeling rejected. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm sort of starting to realize, well, aren't I just imposing my own expectations on the situation? Why do I need a person to contact me in a certain way for me to feel accepted rather than rejected? Why do I need that particular sort of response? Why can't I be secure in reaching out to people the way people typically do on Discord, without getting responses, which is, again, pretty typical for Discord? And yeah, it is because I have this tendency to assume that if someone's taking longer than I would have thought to respond to me, that it must mean that they're deliberately disrespecting me, or that they're being antagonizing, or that they are just flat out trying to subtly let me know that they want nothing to do with me. And yeah, it's not a fair assumption, because the opposite is to assume that in order to participate fully in relationships, everybody has to be at everyone else's command and demand, which isn't really a relationship at all, it's abuse. So, that's another thing that scares me. Like, within myself, I feel very fearful and insecure, and as a result, historically I've made certain demands of partners, believing that I was, entitled to certain things, entitled to things that would prevent these feelings of insecurity, because I read all of those crappy dating guides for women that say, oh, if he's acting in a way that's making you feel insecure, he's abusing you, and you should get out of there, and you're never going to have a meaningful relationship, and, he's just, he's just a player. And, because of this, I made some pretty horrifying demands of my partners sometimes in this effort to have them behave in a way that kept me from feeling insecure of myself. And looking back, I kind of worry if I was abusing them, because I was being that insistent and manipulative. And even now, I feel this persistent urge to try to manipulate people who aren't contacting me as much as I want into contacting me more by guilt tripping, or by some other form of entrapment or temptation. And, I don't want to be this manipulative, though. I want to be able to just be in those situations without trying to make anyone do anything. And again, it's the whole crux of the problem. If I do the things that make me secure enough to not want to manipulate people, I'm essentially doing things that won't foster strong human relationships, because I'll end up being on my own, just reading books and sewing and playing video games by myself and eating and, doing things alone that I find fulfilling, but I'm alone. Whereas if I do the things that could result in human friendships, I'm typically having to do things that make me uncomfortable and place me at other people's mercy. And yeah. But see, there I go. I'm saying placing myself at other people's mercy, as if somehow other people always inherently carry more power within the situation than I do. When, that's not necessarily true. I mean, why do I have to assume that? Why do I have to assume that just because somebody has a lot of friends that they have more power than I do? Why do I have to assume that, that I'm powerless just because I enjoy my own company? And I wonder if the reason I do things alone so much is because I'm trying to actually cover up and run away from the fact that deep down I really do want a relationship, and that that the thought that I'll always be alone, that I'll always just be rejected over and over and over again till I die, that thought makes me really sad. If I'm honest with myself, it does. But that's not... See, again, why do I have to assume that I'm the one person in the world who would have to endure that? And I am thinking that. In the back of my head, I'm thinking that anyone else in the world could find a meaningful relationship if they really wanted, and I'm the only one who can't. And that's a silly assumption. In fact, it's narcissistic. It's narcissistic for me to think that I'm the one person in the world who can't have a meaningful relationship, because it implies that God went out of his way to create one solitary person who couldn't possibly be amongst other people and be at peace. And, I feel like I'm still feeling ambivalence, and yeah, I'm not really sure what to do about it, if I'm honest. I don't know whether the answer is to just go and directly talk to the guy about this, or whether the answer is to just continue working on myself and trying to make myself feel more strong and secure, or whether the answer is to simply, I don't know, to just follow my instincts and just, yeah, I don't know. It's something to pray on. But yeah. I mean, even within the past day, I did go to a sort of online Christian meeting that went really badly for me. Well, it felt like it went badly, as in the people there seemed really interested in talking to me, and then suddenly out of nowhere, I was saying things to them and they weren't responding. And I don't know whether it was a technical difficulty and they just didn't say it, or if it was something else. But yeah. I have those moments where I'm trying to hang out with people and be normal, and I get a bit nervous and I start acting a bit weird, and then yeah, I'm booted, and maybe that's why I find it easier to be secure about the friendships I have with people who are just as isolated as I am, and why I find it so hard to feel at ease around people who seem to have better options in terms of friendship. Maybe I'm just worried that my own insecurities and strangeness will keep everyone else away. But no. If these people were really secure and mature-minded people, they would have valued my humanity enough to not care about my lack of social skills. They would not have booted me just because of that. And they didn't really boot me, they politely ended the conversation. And admittedly, it sounded like they were both making excuses for leaving. But even if that is what was really happening, why should I have to feel bad about that? Because if they're going to behave this way, they're the ones doing the wrong thing. Like, I'm in there trying to be myself and be real and be honest, and, if other people are going to be like, no, we'll just look for excuses to not talk to her anymore. Like, just because she's not acting the way we expect her to. Like, that's not the right way to do things. That's, if I'm being wrong when I make those kinds of assumptions about people, then other people have to be wrong too when they make those assumptions about me. But yeah, I have to continue to learn how to be more secure, because yeah, if I think about it, because I did this virtual tour of Tokyo yesterday as well. And during that time, I tried to be friendly with the tour guide and say, "Oh, what is your favorite thing on the tour?" And she just completely ignored my question. And I'm guessing it's because she thought that I was trolling, or maybe she didn't want to answer something that personal, or maybe she didn't have a ready answer. And, I have been forewarned that Tokyo people can sometimes be a bit unfriendly. That they're a bit more uptight than Osaka people, and as a consequence, it's harder to really muck around with them in a friendly sort of way. But I there was a little part of me that was taking it very personally, and was feeling as though was feeling a little bit slighted, and I don't feel like that's a healthy way for me to respond when things like that happen, really. But again, that might be why spending so much time alone tends to make me feel more secure. It's because those little things happen in social situations all the time, really, and I haven't yet learned that it's okay for those things to happen. I'm assuming that they're only happening to me, but that's because I don't, I'm not in a position to see it when it happens to other people. And I wasn't the only person in the group whose words were being ignored. There were times when other people were saying things and they were being excluded as well. And in fact, there were some people who had misunderstood the medium and were, publicly humiliating themselves in the group, and they somehow I felt like that didn't matter. I guess because I assume that if you're going to act that rudely, you probably don't care enough about people to deserve that kind of consideration. But then other people might be looking at me and thinking the exact same thing about the social mistakes I make. And yeah, I guess it all falls into that realm of negative assumptions and how that can negatively impact your interactions with other people. But, the thing that I'm wrestling with in my heart is, can I be true to myself and still form meaningful relationships? Because my assumption about Discord is that it's impossible for somebody to form a meaningful relationship there due to just how everything is, where people seem to be persistently ignoring one another there, except for, the rarefied few that they deem worthy of their attention. And, even then, I can hear myself applying my own cultural assumption of, you talk to someone more, therefore you must value them more as a human being, and you talk to another person less, therefore you value them less as a person. And, there's this old assumption I have that if you are talking to someone less than somebody else, that if both of them were hanging off a cliff, you would allow the one you're talking to less to be the one you allow to die, as if that would ever even emerge as a situation. And even if it were the truth, it's not going to be unilaterally true. Some people, they just because you're not worth that much to one person doesn't mean you can't be worth that much to another. And yeah, it's just I've never taken rejection well. I've always taken it the bad way and the worst ways. But I feel like somehow it's worse now. It's like in the past, if I got rejected by one guy, I could just go on to like another and be like, well, maybe he won't. But yeah, somehow now, even though I've been through meaningful relationships with people, I actually feel worse. I actually feel like somehow being rejected now somehow means more. And I don't know why I feel that way. I guess it's because I know that I'm older, and I know that as I age, my my opportunities for forming relationships will become increasingly rare and far in between. And whereas, when I was a child, if I had feelings for a guy, it was fairly disposable because I knew that there were always plenty of other guys I could like. But that's another negative assumption I'm making, because the truth is that as an adult woman, there have been more guys paying attention to me and showing signs of being attracted to me than was the case when I was a child. And of course, because, back when you're a kid, people don't really have the emotional maturity to do these things. And like, if I look at myself in, like, right now, I feel like I'm more attractive than I was when I was younger. Admittedly, when I look at photos of myself when I was younger, I look at them thinking, actually, I was pretty good looking back then, even though I felt so ugly. But, yeah. The fact that I think the fact that I have more faith in my ability to be liked, and more faith in more ability to just sort of see myself as I am rather than just always projecting negative assumptions on myself, that already means progress. Admittedly, it's not the amount of progress I would want, but it's still progress. And, so I'm inclined to think that even if I'm struggling now, I'm not necessarily going to be struggling in a month's time or the month after that as much as I am now. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna pray on this, and I'm going to I'm gonna see the next couple of weeks through and just see where I am psychologically, and yeah. I just hate that that's the case. That if this guy that I want to date, if I want to get any closer to him, it's always going to require me to go and do things that I don't really feel comfortable doing. Like, even now, I had the opportunity to go ahead and, invest more in playing World of Warcraft, and that would have enabled me to more connect with this guy. But I felt, I didn't go for that because I sort of felt like, well, why am I having to make all of these personal sacrifices to connect more with you? What personal sacrifices are you making to connect with me more? Why am I having to take money that I could have spent on something, to do with what I really love, like my kimono things and my career and repaying my student debt? Why should I have to take that resource and use it just to connect more with you when you could be connecting with me more right now for free? Like, I felt like I'm not angry at him for wanting that, because obviously if he gets to stay in his comfort zone, it's easier for him. But what about me? What about the way I feel? Doesn't that matter? And it should. And he isn't even saying that it doesn't. He isn't even saying that the way I feel is of no consequence to him. I'm just predisposed to assume that my feelings are of no consequence to anyone. And to, but as I go on, I get better and better at not being so insecure in social situations when these little problems do come up. And, the truth is that if people are seeing it as worthwhile to lie to me just to get away from talking to me, the lie still implies some amount of respect. Because if they really just didn't care about me and how I felt at all, they would just jump out and be like, F you, F off. But they don't do that. That implies at least there's a little bit of common regard there. And, as far as this guy is concerned, I don't know what he's thinking, because I haven't really, had an in-depth conversation with him about all of this. I mean, we conversed enough to know that there was a mutual physical attraction, but, the conversation didn't really go much beyond that. As in, I don't even know what he's really looking for. Like, I don't know if he wants to settle down, really. And I tend to talk like I don't really want to, but that's That's mostly because I'm trying to give myself some reassurance that I can be happy and secure even without having that in my life. Like, if I had the opportunity to settle down with this guy, I totally would. But, well, I mean, based on what I'm seeing, admittedly, I don't, within the confines of a close relationship, I don't know, maybe he will just work out to be a pathological liar, or to just, maybe he'll be just another guy who I get attached to, and then he ends up with some other woman anyway, and, maybe that's just how my life is going to be. But no, that's an overly negative assumption about life, that just because one guy ended up picking another woman over me, that all guys are going to pick other women over me. Like, that's not necessarily how things work, and there are plenty of times when guys have shown me that given the choice, they would have picked me over the women they had, and, or at the very least, that even once they had relationships with other women, they still cared about what I thought and felt about them, which implies that human concerns are not as binary as I thought. That the acceptance of one person doesn't have to mean rejection of another. And that's what I should take away from all of this. That human relationships don't have to be unique to be special. That's what I should be thinking.